community members and neighbors joining us still, I'm going to ask that Dr. Stoll to continue to monitor the waiting room.
I have internet right now.
We'll go ahead and get started with our presentation. Wanted to say thank you for joining us. We'll get right into it as we have, we want to make sure we have plenty of time to answer your questions about this very important topic. So want to just let you know, joining us on our Zoom call for this town hall, we have our district leadership team members, including Superintendent of Schools, Mr. DiCarlo, Dr. Greg Stoll, the Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel and Ed Services, Ms. Deborah Legato, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, myself, Michael Trombley, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning, and Ms. Sandra Clohesi, our Assistant Superintendent for Business. On behalf of the entire leadership team, I want to welcome you and thank you again for joining us. Just a few bit of logistics and etiquette. This Zoom session is being recorded both and also streamed to our YouTube channel. It'll be posted there in the next few days. And also it is being connected to our cable TV channel. So attendance in this town hall is consent that you may be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded but still wish to participate, please feel free to mute your audio and also turn off your video. In addition to that, just a piece of etiquette in this meeting, while we have at present 306 participants and counting, so we really appreciate the great turnout. We do ask that to ensure good connectivity and also a pleasurable viewing experience for all. If you wouldn't mind muting your microphone and also disabling your video. We have disabled the chat, not because we do not want to hear from you, but because we do have such a large participant pool. We don't want to miss anybody who is in the chat and asking questions. We don't want them to feel like we're answering some questions and not answering others. So we will allow ample time for Q&A. And at that time, within the chat, there is the option to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, it will appear on one of our host screen and we'll go through in the order that the hand was raised and try to get to as many people as possible. What we'll do at that time is we'll say the username as we can best identify it. And then we will say, please unmute and state your question. If we do not get to your question today, we still want to hear from you. We have an option and we'll show you that towards the end of our time together this afternoon or this evening. We do have a website with a spot where you can ask questions even after this town hall. We want to make sure you have that ability as we look towards the fall. So we'll show you that in detail as we get towards the end of our presentation. Just an overview of the purpose of this town hall. It's to let you know of our best thinking at this point in time based upon guidance, based upon the information that we have about how we plan to open our schools to your children and our teachers and our staff in the fall. We have posted two main plans that are the backbone of our reopening approach, as we best know it, our mitigation and reopening plan, and then also our teaching and learning guidelines and procedures. Those are pretty dense documents. Really, the purpose of tonight is to help explain those plans in hopefully a succinct manner and answer any of your questions that you may have about that. We know how important of a decision this is. We know the most important thing is the safety of our students and staff, and questions are sure to be surrounding our reopening, and we want to offer a forum where we can best field those questions. We may not have all the answers as of right now, but we want to hear the questions that are out there, and we want to be responsive as we look to answer those questions going forward as new information emerges, as new best practices come about, and as this health crisis changes. Our agenda, as soon as I'm done, I'll turn it over to our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Anthony DiCarlo, who will welcome our community. Dr. Greg Stoll will provide an introduction to our district reopening and mitigation plan. I will then provide an overview of our district learning plan. We will spend time answering questions from the community, and then also we'll talk about our next steps. Just as a reminder, the information we present to you tonight is the best information that we have at this current time. Because of the nature of this health pandemic, things change, guidance changes, approaches change. And with that in mind, what we say tonight, we say to the best of our knowledge at this time. And please be aware that this may change, and we will try to, if anything does impact what our plans are, we will update you as best to the best of our ability possible. Updates since our last town hall. As you know, we had a town hall scheduled for last week. The effects of the tropical storm that came through our area caused us to postpone that. So we rescheduled for tonight, and we added an additional town hall to make sure that we reached all of our community members. Governor Cuomo announced on Friday that because of the low infection rates and the hard work that New Yorkers have done to control the infection rate, he will allow schools to reopen. The decision to open in either full in-person learning or partial in-person learning is a local decision. It must be based on how that individual school district can meet DOH, Department of Health guidelines. We also, from that announcement, school districts were informed that they had to conduct 3 town halls. We had already had 2 scheduled. We added 1 to be in compliance with that, but also to make sure that we reached all of our community members. Districts must meet with teachers at another forum separate from the public. Districts must post the remote portion of their learning plans. We have posted that in our larger reopening documents. However, Governor Cuomo has asked that districts delineate that plan or make so that families do not have to scour through the large document. Ahead of time, when we posted, we made all of our table of contents bookmarks and hyperlinks so that if you're scrolling through the table of contents, you can click on that and be brought right to the specific part of the plan, and we can show you that as well. We also must specifically describe our plan for testing and tracing of staff and students, and we'll get to that in a little bit more detail, but in general, as a school district, we do not have the capacity to test students. We rely on the community testing resources that are made available, both through the community and the county and the state. And also of tracing staff and students. In general, our approach is to work with the DOH and their direction on how we contact trace and the results that come out of that. We also have posted our mitigation and reopening plan in Spanish, and that's the update since our last town hall. I wanted to provide you with 2 key contact individuals of two key individuals for our COVID response and reopening. Dr. Greg Stoll, who you'll hear from in a second, is our COVID-19 safety officer. His role in this aspect is to ensure district compliance with our reopening plan that was submitted to the state and that we'll review in a second here. And then I serve as your COVID-19 resource officer. I'm the primary contact for questions about any COVID-19 health emergency and the district implementation of our plan. Without further ado, I will turn over the presentation to Mr. Anthony DiCarlo as he welcomes our community members.
Thank you, Mr. Tremblay, and to all community members, thank you very much for being a part of tonight's town hall. And I hope everybody fared as well as possible with the storms last week, because as we've learned in 2020, the health and safety of everybody is paramount and the most important. As Mr. Tremblay mentioned, I would be remiss if I didn't really extend my thanks to Mr. Tremblay, to Dr. Stowell, to Assistant Superintendent Legato and Assistant Superintendent Cloesi. A lot of work has gone into the putting together of this plan that you're going to see tonight. As we've mentioned and Mr. Tremblay mentioned, this is something that's going to be in work in progress all year long. And as you know, and I want to thank all of you many of you for your nice correspondence over the course of last spring and the summer on the updates that we're giving you every Tuesday and Friday to try to keep you up to date on what was happening in the state and looking at our plans. So to no surprise, and I had kind of foreshadowed this, we kind of knew where the governor was going to go with the model, because based on his, below 5% and above 9%, we knew we were at that threshold and probably we'd be looking at in person. So that's why tonight we'll be discussing both a hybrid model for the most part, as well as the remote model. And I'm sure you all understand these 2 models, and based on our hybrid, are interchangeable. So for some reason, during the course of the 2021 school year, we have to go to full remote. It'll be somewhat of an easier transition. You will hear from Mr. Tremblay how we've upgraded and we're working with our staff when it comes to what that remote learning looks like. We took your feedback over the course of the spring and the summer to talk about some of the things you'd like to see happening more in that remote aspect. And Mr. Tremblay will talk to you about that. The other important piece to this is, now that we know that we're going with hybrid, is the health and safety, of course, of our students, our teachers, our entire staff. And what's really important about this, and it's something that Dr. Stoller will speak to you about, but I want you to be clear about it. we will be working very closely with the Putnam County Department of Health, and they will, through each case, let us know what we need to do in regards as a school district. There is no one set moniker that if this happens and somebody gets COVID, automatically here's what happens. It's case by case, and it'll be based on the contact tracing that is done by the Department of Health, and we'll go through a little bit about that as we go through today. As we go through today, again, we'll be answering some of the questions you may have. This is something that we know, although today is August 11th and we're not opening up till the beginning of September, a lot of things can change. And I'm sure some of your frustration is some of ours, because the governor will give you some guidance, but has not given anybody else that guidance first. And therefore, some days we have to go back and kind of get a better understanding of what he actually means. So as of today, we're presenting our program. As you are well aware, what's guiding us with this is the social distancing of the 6 feet, the wearing of masks, our building square footages, and what we can and can't do. So at this point in time, we're going to share with you our hybrid model, what it looks like, and then we'll open it up for questions. So then, once again, thank you for being a part of tonight's town hall. There'll be subsequent information between now and the opening of school. And without further ado, I turn it over to Dr. Stowell, who'll give you an overview of the health and safety component.
Mr. DiCarlo, thank you so much. It is exciting to see over 400 people on our meeting today. So it's really important that we can all sit and unpack this together. So I want to talk a little bit about our reopening plan and kind of go through it a little bit. It is over 60 pages. There is no way that I'm going to be able to go through every bit of the plan, but I'll talk to you a little bit about how it's, where you can find it, how it's organized, and how some of the major salient points of it is developed. So the first thing that I would say is you can find our new website on under quick links under our district website under quick links. If you click on it, you will go to our reopening website. And this is kind of going to be your one-stop shopping. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, it is organized in a way that you can get to our district plan, and here's where you find it. You can get to parent help desk. You can get to resources for parents, resources for staff, community resources. And this evening, with over 400 people, we are not going to be able to get to every question. And for those that still have a question that we weren't able to get to, if you click on this button down here, you can submit a question to us. And we're hopefully by the end of this week, be able to provide you with an FAQ that we will post on that particular site. So this district reopening and mitigation plan is really broken into guiding principles. And first and foremost, the guiding principle that we're going to adhere to is the health and safety of your children and the health and safety of our staff and our school community. So that becomes the foundation for this entire plan. We're also going to talk about our facilities. Mr. DiCarlo talked a little bit about our facilities and our footprint allow us to do certain things. How we feed our students, how we transport our students. We know that the closure in the last 5 months, we know that the closure on the last 5 months, people are going to be a little bit nervous to come back into our building. And so that's really important for us to know as well. Mr. Traum is going to talk about how school schedules work. He's going to talk a little bit about how attendance is really important when we talk about our hybrid model. Technology and connectivity is really important when we have students that are in person and students that are working remotely, or in the event that we're asked to shut down for hopefully not at all, but if a short period of time, how we can make sure that everybody is connected. Mr. Trombley will talk in our teaching and learning plan about how that's gonna happen in a hybrid model. I'll talk a little with Mr. Trombley about special education, bilingual education, and obviously we're gonna have staffing issues. If people are not feeling well, and when I get into health checks, we'll talk a little bit about that, and we have issues of staffing, we just have to keep in mind that we're going to have to be fluid and be able to respond to that. So we'll talk a little bit about the planning considerations, but if you go into the plan, you can't sleep at night, you need something to put you to sleep a little bit, you can read through this plan. It's broken out to the principles that I said, planning considerations, and then it talks about how do we do those planning considerations in every single location that we think students and staff will be, such as school buses, nurses, hallways, offices, classrooms, and so forth. So let me just, we're going to spend about another 15 minutes just going through this plan, just the highlights, the 30,000-foot view, then we'll go through the learning portion of it with Mr. Trombley, and then we'll open up for questions. So again, I want to thank everybody that's been part of this plan, our district-wide safe committee, the unions that we've met with, the Putnam County Department of Health, our school board, our superintendent, and our leadership team and building principals who have been instrumental, and our nurses who've been instrumental. So again, just going into our guiding principles, I think the first thing is we start to break down and start to unpack these guiding principles. One of the things that I think is important for parents and staff to know is that we're going to be rolling out an application that can be done by your phone, where everybody, and this is part of guidance, everybody is responsible to do a self-health screening and check before they come into the building or before they go into onto the bus stop. What's really important to know is that if your child has a fever, and we're talking about, not using medication and they have a fever, they're to stay home. If they have any of these symptoms, they are to stay home for the day. There's going to be questions about, if you've been in contact with anybody who has COVID-19 in the past 14 days. If you've tested positive, please stay home. Or if you have traveled to any of the 14, in the last 14 days, any of the states that are on New York State's quarantine list. So again, it's really important if we want our students to stay home. And I'm just going to ask, if you don't mind, if anybody can please mute their screen, because I'm hearing some feedback and I want to make sure everybody hears. So the other thing that's really important as part of this plan is that there are return to school procedures after an illness. And I'm not going to go through every one of them right now.
Entonces, a ver en qué quedamos, que le vamos a entregar algo a Ángel o él va a medir o cómo.
Creo que lo mejor es que lo tengamos ya en obra.
Por favor, llámame. Hay una persona que tiene su computador y otra conversación. Gracias.
Gracias, Mr. Ricardo.
De nada.
So hold on one second. I'm just gonna mute everybody. Mike, maybe you can mute everybody. Okay. I got it. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me now. Sorry about that disruption. I appreciate it. This is the world we live in with 500 people on a Zoom call, so I appreciate it. As I was saying, there are procedures, I won't go through all of them, that if you're a staff member or a student, that you really have to follow these procedures before you return to work. The other thing that I think is really important for us to know is that there are certain groups that may be immunocompromised or have serious conditions, whether you're a student or a staff member. We are giving the you to talk to HR. If you are a parent and you have any concerns regarding your child returning to school, that there will be something going out where you can opt in for full remote learning if you're concerned about the health and safety of your child. So I think that that's really important to know that that's there as well. A couple of the other things that we need to talk about is that we're going to have systematic cleaning and of all of our rooms in all of our locations. And I think that's really important for us to know that every night there'll be nightly disinfecting of our rooms and our locations with respect to any of the locations your children will be in, school buses, classrooms, anything to that nature. Those things will absolutely be cleaned every single night. Lastly, going back to our plan. Lastly, I think one of the things to know about health and safety is that what's really important for families to know, for staff to know, is that we are going to have to make sure that we work, and I think Mike said it, that we work with the Department of Health we're not doing testing, but we will help provide families with resources of where they can get testing. We will make sure that we give the information. We're required to take attendance where our kids are, where our staff are, that we will participate in the contact tracing as well. And so I think that's something that the governor in his last update talked a little bit about, and that if there is a closure, which I think is really important, it's not the school district that's going to determine a closure, and we're not talking about snow days. It is the Department of Health. And it doesn't mean that a whole building closes or that a whole district closes. It's really going to depend on what the status of that closure is and what the contact tracing is. In our facilities, one of the things that I think is important is Mr. DeCarlo talked about, we have a physical footprint in order to keep our students and our staff physically distanced for about 6 feet. We're going to have to go into a hybrid model if we're going to keep people safe. We're going to have to make sure that people wear masks when they're in school, that certainly there's mask breaks, that your students have masks at the bus stop, they have masks on the bus. If they forget it by accident or it malfunctions, we will have plenty to provide for them. But it's really important that we keep that physical distancing and our students are physically distanced when they're in the classroom. The other thing that's really important, and part of what we're going to be doing, is making sure that we're serving food to our students continuously through our school food authority requirements, but at the same time, we're doing it safely. So there may be grab and goes, there may be less options. We need to move kids in quick. And in some locations, they'll be eating in their classroom, and things like the high school will have special locations for them to eat, so that there's not 300 kids in one particular room, because as they eat and as they drink, they're not going to have masks. So we're working really hard with our buildings to ensure that not only that our foods are provided, they're provided safely, and that when we provide meals, that they're done in a way that keeps kids safe. And if students are on remote for, in that hybrid model, if they're on remote for that day, there's options for them bringing food home if that's something that they need to do. Transportation is also probably a concern that many of you may have. And I think it's really important to know that we are looking at cutting the number of students in at one time in approximately 1/2. So that means there should be less density on our school buses. Even though kids are on our school buses with less density, they're still going to have to wear a mask, and they're still going to have to distance as much as possible. And at the same time, we know that they'll be loading from the back to the front and disembarking from the front to the back in an orderly way, so that they're not clustered together. Social emotional well-being, as I said earlier, we're working with our staff, with our clinical team, to make sure that we provide multi-level tiers of support for social emotional readiness. Coming back to school could be anxiety provoking for mostly anybody under normal circumstances. Under these circumstances, you can only imagine not being in school, not knowing what it's going to be like. Your classrooms are going to look different. You're going to be socially distanced from your friends and your classmates. So we need to make sure that even though things feel different, people still feel connected to their school community, and that's important as well. Mr. Trombley will talk about school schedules. If there's questions about, yes, all of these things cost money. There's no question about it. Additional cleaning, additional staffing when we need it for supervision. We're working really hard around the clock right now to get the buildings ready, to think about different things to keep kids safe and to still instruct our students. So certainly there's a budget and fiscal impact on this. Mr. Trombley talk a little bit more about attendance. He'll talk a little bit more about how, when kids are on remote learning under our hybrid model, or even if they're remote learning, if there's a short-term closure, it's going to be a lot more synchronous learning. There's going to be attendance taken period by period at the secondary, twice a day at the elementary, to ensure that our kids are connected and that they're part of the learning process. Couple of the other things, connectivity. As you know, we were built as a district, and many of you, if some of you are new, we were built as a district to be 1-to-1, 5 through 12, full class cart in 3 and 4, but we were never built to be a 1-to-1 district. We turned into a 1-to-1 district for every kid. So we need to make sure that there's connectivity at home and everybody has a device. And we've done a really good job. The team has done a good job last year, but now we have a whole new crop of kindergartners coming in. We have new entrants coming in. We want to make sure that prior to the beginning of the school year, and we're working on plans to get our kindergartners equipped, and that we touch base with them to make sure that they're connected at home. And that's really important. And as I said earlier, there's a parent desk, help desk request on our reopening site. So if you ever, as a parent, have an issue with connectivity or your device, it's really important that you put in a tech request. And our folks have been responding within 24 hours to get people connected and to get their books, Chromebooks up and running. Mr. Trombley, again, we'll talk about teaching and learning. We'll talk about special education when we talk about teaching and learning. One thing I want to highlight here is school closures or working remotely impacts different kids differently. And there's an inequity inherent in that. Students with more significant disabilities that have full-day special education programs, that have a lot of supports and services, require proximity like OT and PT throughout their school week, those kids are impacted differently than kids that are more able to follow along in a remote environment. So for those populations, those students may be getting everyday services if they're typically getting full-day special education services and supports, as the same as our second language learners. Our most at-risk second language learners will still be able to bring them in daily and allow them to have that more time in school so that it can mitigate any of the equity issues when they're remote. And again, staffing, we're going to have to think about this in a different way. As I said earlier, there'll be the normal flu season, the normal sniffles. And when we used to be warriors as employees and say, you know, I got the sniffles, I don't feel right, I'm going to come in. We can't do that anymore. So there have been plenty of times, and I know that many of the teachers on the call, they've done the same. They don't feel just right. You know, they take some medicine, they come in. Our families have at times done the same thing too. As a parent, I've done it too. This is a different era. And I think what's really important for us to know is that if you're a staff member and you're not feeling well and you answer yes to any of those questions on the health survey, you stay home and you call your supervisor. If you're a parent, please, please, please don't give your child Motrin, send them in, because the minute they have a fever, we're going to send them to the nurse and you're going to be coming to pick them up. This is the regulations from the Department of Health and guidance. So we can't hold them for the day. We can't keep them there. They're going to be in an isolation room if they have a fever with kids that potentially, you know, may have COVID. So it's really, really, really important. If your kid doesn't feel well, keep them home. If they don't feel well but can still participate in online instruction, they can still participate in online instruction, even if it's a day that they're supposed to be in. So again, I'm going to stop there because I've done a lot of talking, which I like to do a lot of listening, and these are really hard for me to kind of just keep talking. But I think as this plan unfolds, as you see what I'm sharing with you, we take each of those considerations I talked about earlier as we open, and we break it down by, if you want to know how the school bus is going to operate, please go down by considerations and actions by locale, and you'll see all the mitigation strategies and the details that are what we're doing on our buses. You want to see how we're handling the nursing offices, this is where you find it, so on and so forth. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to hand the controls over to Mr. Trombley. And I thank you for listening. And again, if you with questions at the end, and if you don't get to your question, please go to our reopening website, post a question. We're hoping to build an FAQ by early next week.
Thank you, Dr. Stoll. Just a little housekeeping item before we go into the next section of our town hall meeting. We're nearing close to 500 participants, which is fantastic. 500 of our community members coming in to listen and be informed of our approach at this time. If you have any of your neighbors or friends who are trying to access and they're not coming in, Dr. Stoll and I are monitoring the waiting room and admitting the best we can. Just know that we do have this connected to our cable channels, and we will also be recording this and will be placed on our YouTube channel so that it can be viewed later. We do also have another town hall tomorrow at 2 p.m. So if you do have some neighbors who are saying I can't get in, please also let them know. We also will be able to hear their questions that they may have through our website, where they can submit questions to that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, just to take over where Dr. Stoll left off from the first and foremost. The most important part is our safety considerations. And if my colleagues can let me know if they don't see my screen, just
good. It's there, Mike.
Great, thank you, Mr. DiCarlo. So picking up where Dr. Stoll left off, of course, the instructional and our learning plan must follow our safety considerations. So given our current safety considerations and what we are allowed to do within those safety parameters, if you scroll down to the bottom of the reopening and mitigation plan, you'll find a link to our teaching and learning guidelines and procedures. And this document outlines expectations for the teaching and learning environment, and it's updated as we learn new information, as we explore best practices. What we'll focus on right now is the instructional schedule. And as I mentioned before, so you don't have to sift through the entire plan, to the best of our ability, we bookmark the main chapters or sections of this so you can have quick and easy access. If you see the blue link, you can click on the bookmark and it will bring you right to the instructional schedules, and this as an example here. So as Mr. DiCarlo said, we anticipate starting our year in a hybrid schedule, which is a term that combines in-person and distance learning to allow us to safely open our schools and mitigate through the use of social distance the spread of the virus, hopefully. Our hybrid learning schedule limits the number of students in the building at one time, allowing us to adhere to health and safety guidelines. It also emphasizes our teachers interacting with students, both in person and remotely, and has a strong synchronous component. One of the main pieces of feedback we heard that came out as a result of distance learning is a desire to be connected to our teachers. And of course, why not? We have wonderful teachers here who care about our children, who put in long hours, making sure that they plan and facilitate engaging learning activities for our students. So we heard that, and we wanted to have the best approach possible in a safe manner. So what that means is we will, for the vast majority of students, we will cluster students into two cohorts, the blue cohort and the gold cohort. What that means is that on blue designated days, we will have students, those students who are identified as blue cohort will be in-person learning. They will be on the bus, they will be transported to school if you drive them to school, and they will be present and on site. If you are assigned to the gold cohort on a blue day, that means you will be learning remotely. And just to give you as an example, we have this broken down by all of our approaches to the schedule, whether it's a full in-person schedule, our hybrid learning schedule. As an example, you can see here at the elementary level, we will start out the first day of student classes. If it falls on a Tuesday, we will have our blue cohort students in person. The gold cohort students will be learning at home. When it is a gold cohort day, the gold cohort students will be in person learning in front of their teacher, while the blue cohorted students will be learning at home. Our schedulers and our principals are in the process right now of assigning those cohort groups. And to the best of our ability, we will be communicating those cohort groups probably mid next week to make sure that you can help plan, we can help you plan for childcare if needed, but also to give you the information that you need to do to hopefully see your participation in this. To the greatest extent possible, we do have some students that we will be bringing in every day for a number of reasons. English language learners, for those most at risk and to the greatest extent possible, we will be bringing them in with daily in-person instruction within the classroom. and specific scheduling decisions for those learners will be communicated to families prior to opening. In a similar manner, there may be some special education students, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Stoll to discuss the plan for those students.
So if your child, as I said earlier, is in a full day special education program, gets extensive services, having them work remotely creates an inequity. So those children who are in full day special education program with supports and services, we will be communicating to them at the same time that cohorts that they will be in person every day to the greatest extent possible. We'll be communicating that with those families. So if you're a parent of a student with a disability and they're in a full day special education program, then your child will most likely be coming in every single day.
Thank you, Dr. Stoll. We showed you what the anticipated elementary schedule for the blue and gold cohorts would look like. If you are a parent of a middle school student, the middle school student operates on a B, C, or D day schedule. That is the schedule that the student will follow for their daily learning activity. So if it's an A day and they have science first, and then they have math, and then they have a study hall, or then they have their English class, that is the daily schedule they'll follow. But their cohort date is still their cohort schedule is still identified. If they're going to be in school or learning remotely, will be identified by the color and the name. In a similar way, the high school operates on an A-B daily schedule for what classes that student will be taking. But if they need to know what cohort they will be in, if they are in person or learning remotely, that is identified by the blue or gold cohort schedule. And as I said, our schedulers are working on that right now to make sure we can identify those cohorts, and we will communicate those anticipated to you next week, by mid next week. The remote learning aspect of this, and we'll talk about what the classroom might look like. The remote learning aspect of this, students will be connected and follow their, if it's a blue day and I'm a gold cohort student, that means I'm learning remotely. That means that I am connecting to my teacher's Meet, the Google Meet for that class, using my district provided device. And I follow my regular schedule. And I'm going to be connected into that classroom. I'm going to be following the learning plan that my teacher has. There'll be a camera that is streaming the teacher's instruction when applicable. For instance, when the teacher is providing direct instruction on new content, when they're answering questions, when they're providing feedback to students. There will be times, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, where the at-home student will have an opportunity to turn off their camera and engage in the work that the teacher is assigning. And we'll talk about what that might look like as we're entering this new paradigm. While we are anticipating this hybrid schedule, we also recognize that there may be families who are undecided or uncertain about having their child participate in in-person learning. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but we will be, after our last town hall, providing an opportunity for parents to opt their child out of any in-person learning. Meaning this child will learn fully on the remote side of our learning plan. They'll follow their same schedule that they received. They'll have the same teacher that they were assigned, and they will go through their normal learning plan and daily schedule that is assigned. They will just connect remotely. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we get to the conversation of the form. I want to touch base on attendance because we do know that having our students present and active participants is a key component of their success. So if we are in full in-person learning, that means that the health officials, that the New York State Education Department, that the governor has said, you're going back to school, of course, we will take attendance as normal. During the hybrid learning plan, elementary teachers will take attendance daily and twice daily during the instructional period. So the first attendance check will be recorded at the Pledge of Allegiance, and the second attendance check will be after lunch. For secondary students, their teachers will be taking attendance within the first 5 minutes of each instructional period and noting that in our student information system. The remote learners, they need to be connected to the Google Meet and also be an active participant in the learning plan for that day to be considered present. Now, this is where communication comes into play. If I am at home as a remote learner, and I know, and I am not connecting when the teacher says, okay, we're going to work on this for 5 minutes and make sure you come back. If that continues to be a persistent pattern, the teacher will more than likely have a conversation with the student and to make sure that they're understanding what's maybe going on at home, if there's any barrier to being connected during that time. But the expectation is that remote learners will be connected and engaged with the teacher's learning plan for those days while they're at home. Now, we understand that you as a household, particularly if you have young learners in the household, there may be times where you need to pull that child away from the computer, and that just involves communication with the school. Letting them know, I need to run an errand today. I can't leave my child at home. They may not be present from this time to this time. So that communication is key. On those same lines, when we talk about cohort attendance, meaning if I'm in the blue cohort and it's my day to be in school, I need to be in school. If I am not able to attend in-person or remote learning due to an illness, the parents should call the school as soon as possible to inform the building of that absence. And we'll talk about that in a second. Once we assign a cohort to you, we ask you to follow that cohort schedule. It's imperative that that schedule is followed because it's being put in place for safety considerations to reduce the density of our students in the class. If a student shows up on a day that they are not assigned to be in school, the school will call the parent of record, and the parents are expected immediately to come and pick up their child, because for safety reasons, we need to make sure that that cohort model is followed. Now, if a child wakes up in the morning and is unable to attend their in-person classes on their day that they're scheduled, but they feel comfortable attending remote learning, they feel well enough to do that, parents should still contact the office and let them know that and indicate that to the office. My son is not going to be able to attend. It's his in-person cohort day, but he does feel well enough to connect remotely. Additionally, Dr. Stoll mentioned that there will be daily health screenings. So if a student is scheduled to attend in-person classes but must stay home due to the results of their daily health screening, parents should again call the school attendance office to inform the building of that absence. And if the student is unable to attend, is unable to attend in person but feels well enough to participate remotely, they may do that as well. But then making sure that they do connect to that remote aspect. So we're talking a lot about a new teaching and learning environment. We talked about how there will be a camera focused on the teacher. It will not be focused on anything but the teacher and the teacher's workstation. The teacher has the discretion to turn off the camera at times when they won't be in front of it. Let's say they're walking around the room in a safe social distance, monitoring student progress, or they're giving the students an individual work session time. But we also want to remind you that students are not allowed to record, modify, or distribute any video or still images of teachers. That is in our code of conduct. And we do ask students to be mindful of that because we will not be recording those live streams either from a student privacy end. Some teachers may opt to record themselves for asynchronous activities to be provided later, but we will not be recording the live stream of the event or of the class. Going along with that theme, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. We realize that the majority of our teachers have never been trained to teach in this new teaching and learning environment. And the majority of our students have never been trained to learn in this type of learning environment. So we know that there's going to be a large adjustment there. I understand the desire to say, well, what will this look like specifically? And we're working with our teachers. Dr. Stoll and I have started to have daily meets with our teachers to hear their questions about what this learning environment will look like. We hope those daily meets, and we anticipate those daily meets will turn into sharing of best practices as we as educators are sharing what might occur in this teaching and learning environment. So we know that professional development for our teachers is key. We will be adjusting the start of our school year to reflect the need to provide more professional learning for our teachers. And also to help train our teachers to help our students understand safety protocols. So if you notice if you were able to read Mr. DeCarlo's July 31st superintendent's update, we talked about what the opening might look like. September 8th will be a superintendent's conference day where we will work with our teachers on some of the training that needs to be in place, both from a safety protocols perspective and also an instructional perspective. September 9th, we'll start our contact with our students. That will be a half day, and we'll start with the blue cohort of students. So on September 9th, if your son or daughter is assigned to the blue cohort, they will come in person. If you are assigned to a gold cohort, you will connect remotely to your teacher's classroom, and that will be a half day. The other half of that day will be spent on professional learning opportunities for our teachers. September 10th will be a half day as well, but the gold cohort will be coming into school and the blue cohort will be learning remotely. And the other part of that half day will be opportunities for professional learning for our teachers. September 11th, all students, blue cohort, gold cohort, if you've been asked to come in every day or if you have opted to learn remotely, every student will learn remotely on that day, and we will provide professional learning for our teachers on that day. So that's a brief overview, and we'll definitely share more details as we get closer and we solidify plans for that. And we will be working with our teachers on various topics in professional development, such as safety protocols and procedures in this new learning environment. How can we support our students' social emotional wellness? How do we engage our students with the content in this hybrid model, or in the fact that we have some students learning in front of us, some students learning at home? We'll look at ways to connect our cohorts to make sure that the class still has that social presence that is so important in online learning experiences. And we'll also work with our teachers on how they can facilitate various learning in various environments, such as in-person, hybrid, and distance learning. That's the brief overview of our learning plan. At this time, I know that we've thrown, as Dr. Stoll said, we've talked for a long time and we've thrown a lot at you. We will open it up to participant questions at this time. And so the way that we'd ask you to do this is if you go into your participant menu, if you please raise your hand, we will begin to see individuals asking to have their question recognized. And so at this time, we'll turn it over to participant questions by raising your hand through the raise hand function in the participant agenda, and we will call you out and ask you to unmute yourself. So and I'll share my screen to show you how you will access that raising of the hand. So if you go into your participant tab and you click on more, you can raise your hand. I'm sorry, that's the clap. There should be, I'm not allowed to raise my hand, so you should be able to see the raising of the hand for your aspect. As the host, I can't raise my hand.
If everyone goes to the participant feature, they'll be able to see all the different features there, the raising of the hand and all that.
So yes, again, please click on, if you go to the bottom of the screen, you can scroll down to participants and you should be able to see your feature to be able to raise your hand. I'll show you again on my screen. You just won't be able to see the raise hand feature on my screen because as the host, I cannot raise my hand.
We can see the raise your hand feature. Can you open up the chat so some parents can probably write their question in chat if they may not want to raise their hand?
Everybody raised their hand. So with 400 people, the chat will populate really quickly. And so we have found, this is all new for us too, right? So we found when we have really big video conferences, the chat feature becomes overwhelming. Someone said, you missed my question. That's why we disabled the chat feature. It just becomes too wonky with we have 444 participants today, so the chat feature becomes unmanageable. So I do see people raising their hands. So Mike will call on those people one by one. Again, there is no way we're going to get to everybody's questions. Please leave us a comment on our website, as I showed you earlier, if you get to your question, or to your point, which is a really good one. If you don't feel comfortable speaking in front of a large group, you can just submit your question that way. We're going to take all those questions, cull them down to like main ideas, and do a frequently asked questions. We hope to get that out next week. So hopefully those questions will be answered. if even then, if your question is not answered, we do have some time before the opening of school. You can contact Mike Trombley, who's the school COVID-19 officer, or you can contact me, who is the school COVID-19 safety administrator. So if we don't get answered out of that period of time, then you can always, our contact was on this. It's on our website. You can email any one of us. And if you have a specific questions that's really like particular to your situation, we'd be happy to answer them as best we can. But if you don't mind, just give us a little time to beef up our FAQ, post it. And then if it's something that we still didn't get to, we'd be happy to, have conversations with anyone.
So as Dr. Stoll was watching, I just lost the username B Wyman. I see that you have your hand up in the first as the Q. So username BWYMAN, please feel free to unmute yourself, and we're looking forward to your question. So again, I can only go by username BWYMAN. You're the first one with your hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for pulling this together. It's really awesome. And it's also awesome to see, north of 500 people joining the call. It's great. So I have a two-part question. They're kind of related. So I noticed in your schedule, you have the blue and gold cohort going on the same week. Why? What's the rationale for that? So that's part one. And part two, are people going to be sharing desks? And if so, what's the cleaning protocol for those shared desks?
Thank you very much for the question. So yes, we do anticipate having both cohorts attending each week. And the reason for that is we wanted to make sure that we had as much continuity of instruction time for all learners. We wanted to make sure that we had, within a 2-week period, we had equal amounts of in-person and remote learning occurring. Our cleaning protocols will say each night that we do a deep clean of our classrooms, and we wanted to keep the cohorts with some continuity coming in. For instance, the first week, the blue cohort, you'll notice, will come in for 3 days. We wanted to make sure that there was a good amount of time for those students with the direct interaction in the classroom of the teacher. And then if you notice, the next week, the gold cohort will have the opportunity for 3 days in class. We will be cleaning every night, and I'll let Dr. Stoll explain a little bit about what that cleaning protocol will look like.
So every night, every single building, every location in every building will be disinfected with an agent that has a kill factor recognized by the CDC. That includes buses and classrooms and hallways and and bathrooms. We also, part of our cleaning protocol, during the day, is to clean, and we can't be every single surface in a building, but most frequent high touch surfaces. So for if you're a blue cohort and the next day's gold cohort and your child's gold, that you can be rest assured that classroom will be disinfected, that bathroom will be disinfected that night prior to your child attending school.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Next up in the raising their hand is username Peterson, Peterson. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and we look forward to your question.
Hi. So I have a two-part question as well. And mine is more specific to elementary level children and around the videos. So first of all, if a child, I have a second grader, does not have the attention span to watch a live stream for that, possible to get the content in another format? And then secondly, has it been thought of that potentially having a camera on a teacher all day would inhibit the teacher from engaging with the children and, whether it's a silly song or different interactive behaviors to get the children to engage and help them learn? Has it been thought of that it may inhibit that behavior?
Sure. Yeah. So we understand that this paradigm of the teaching and learning environment is unlike anything most of us have been prepared for. So with your question to the first part of your question, we understand that as I'm sure many of us have experienced virtual meeting fatigue, we know that having a kindergartner, a second grader, an eighth grader, or a 40-year-old man such as myself connect online all day is not the most effective approach. So we are going to work with our teachers on the flexibility that they have to tell student to have independent work activities, have partner work activities, group activities, but also whole class activities, and how a classroom might look like, and working with our teachers on procedures within the classroom to say, okay, we're going to take the next, as an example, we're going to take the next 10 minutes. I've given you a task. You can feel free to turn off your computer camera, but come back to keep your audio on, come back in about 15 minutes and we'll regroup as a large group and I'll review what you worked on. I may also, as a teacher, walk around in the classroom at that time or connect with my remote learners to check on their progress. So we do understand, and we don't expect our students to be on there for 6 hours at a time. And that's one thing we're going to work with our teachers on how they can have those various learning activities and structures to do that. Additionally, we are giving our teachers the flexibility if there's an opportunity in the class where they turn off their camera to the remote learners and may interact with their in-class students in a different way on a learning activity. But also remember, this is meant to get as much exposure to in-class, in-person learning as possible within safety parameters. So a student who may have been learning at home, when their cohort is in class, that's when they will be in front of the teacher and they won't be connecting on the camera the whole time. This is not how many of us as educators, most educators know that this is not the best way to instruct students. We know that. We know that our teachers are having to learn and adapt quickly, as well as our students. So we're going to provide the best of our ability to professionally develop them, answer their questions, but also rethink our classroom at this time.
Thank you. And just one more clarifying point. So would it be possible to get the content like similar to how we had in the spring?
So yes.
Or is it going to be only that live stream?
No, we are working with our teachers. Google Classroom will still be utilized as the main repository where the resources are posted. So we'll work with our teachers to talk about how they can post the resources for access at any time. Even if I'm a student in class, I may want to revisit that resource, or if the teacher had a document that they had me look at. So we will be posting resources to Google Classroom. And as you saw in the spring, many of our teachers do take advantage of some of the technology tools that we have to provide asynchronous activities for our students once the class is over as well too.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Next in the participant raising their hand is Stephanie Albatelli. It's a last name Altobelli. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and we're looking forward to your question.
Hi, thank you for having us. I just have a couple of questions. Is the elementary continuing to roll out the Teachers College reading program into the next grades? And then another question is, are there going to be filters in the air conditioners, and or are they allowed to be on the air conditioners?
Stephanie, thank you. So yes, as you know, we have this community has been very supportive of our approach to bringing in the Teachers College Readers Writers Workshop. Our teachers have done a fantastic job learning that new program under extreme circumstances, and we are planning on continuing to roll out that instructional model. It does present challenges. I'm meeting with the principals next week and our literacy coach to talk about access to digital text, because a key component to that is the leveled libraries, the trade books. And we're going to look at our options to provide teachers and then students the opportunity to have those leveled text digitally, and how we might rethink this in a digital framework. We did bring in the Teachers College. We hosted, thanks to the community support of our budget, we hosted a 5-day long Teachers College pop-up institute. We brought Teachers College trainers to our staff, and we had a number of our staff members attend that. And I know that that was a major concern and a topic during that training. So we're going to meet as a district to talk about how we can support that. But yes, we will continue to roll that out. It won't be obviously how it's done in the workshop model in the classroom, but as with everything, we're working with our educators to really think about the purpose of what we do and how we might be able to adapt that purpose. For instance, am I handing out a worksheet to do a formative check for understanding? Or am I handing out a worksheet so that I can gather information of if my students are progressing? Does it need to occur in a worksheet? Can I make a discussion topic in Google Classroom out of that? Or can I deliver it as an online form? Or do I need it as a worksheet? Those are questions that we're going to work with our teachers to think about how they approach the instruction. And I'll turn over unless I didn't answer the question fully, I'll turn over the second question to Ms. Sandra Clohessy about air conditioners and if the air conditioners can be on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So at this time, we are changing all of our filters in our univents, our air handlers, and any of our air conditioning. At this time, we have not been told that we cannot use them. So we will be using them, but we will be changing our filters. So everything will be fresh and new for the students in class. So that's where we are with that right now. Also, I guess it might be also important to let you know that, you know, the schools are set up have a certain airflow within them per student or per minute. And basically by only having half of the students in at a time, we're in fact doubling that amount. So there would be a little less concern on the ventilation because we really are only having half of our students in there.
Thank you.
Next in our participant chat, we have Dana. Feel free to unmute and we're looking forward to your question.
Hello?
Yes, Dana.
Oh, hi. Thank you for taking my question. I just have one quick question. If I choose to opt out and keep my child home learning remotely, will I be given any opportunities throughout the year to change my mind and then send him in to learn in person?
Great question. Yes. So we anticipate sending the form out, as we mentioned, for you to opt out of in-person activities. And in that form, it'll detail that once a decision is made to opt out of in-person learning, if you're at the elementary school, that must hold true until the next trimester. Okay. And at the next trimester, we'll resend the form if we are still in this health crisis and still in this format. And where you can say at that point in time, I'd like to come back into the hybrid model and have that time. At the secondary level will be on a quarterly basis. So when you fill out the form, by asking to opt out of in-person learning, it will be for a trimester at the elementary or a quarter at the secondary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Fair enough. Thank you.
Next in the participant chat is Elizabeth Cox. Please feel free to unmute yourself and state your question.
Hi, thank you so much. I just had a question about how the middle school cohorts will work. I'm really clear about how the elementary blue and gold days are going to work, but you know, say my daughter is on Team C, how many in-person days per week is she gonna have?
So the team would not matter as much as the cohort.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Elizabeth. The cohort would be the days of the week that your student comes in, not their team designation. So if your daughter is identified as a gold cohort, no matter what day of the week it is for schedule-wise, the day that gold cohort students are scheduled to be in class in person, your daughter would attend at that time. Does that answer your question?
So no matter whether she's team A, B, C, if she's gold, she's in gold day.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next in the participant chat, I have Malve Desiree C, MALAVE DESEIRE capital C. Please feel free to unmute yourself and we're looking forward to your question.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My question was how is the course?
I'm sorry, your audio broke up. Could you please restate your question? I think it started, how is the cohort decided?
No, how is the cohort working with the BOCES students in the tech center?
Very good question. So just today, we reached out to the BOCES Tech Center. We heard that their initial plan is to have students on site in person every day. We're confirming that with their principal. We are that's one of those questions that we're going to need a few more days to fully look at. We're going to have to work with transportation on what a transportation schedule will look like. So that is a question that we have yet to be determined. But once we identify that, we will communicate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We did hear from them that BOCES is for the BOCES Tech Center. These are individuals who attend instructional activities at the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES Tech Center at the high school. And they are exploring, they will allow seniors to drive, and they're exploring the opportunity for juniors to drive if that is chosen by the family as a way to avoid having to take district transportation on those days as well.
So Mike, just to echo that comment, because I'm onward, this is Mr. DeCarlo, everybody. So please be assured, if your son or daughter is in that program, that is not changing. They will be going to that program. We'll be working with them to get them there, whether or not they're fully or they're remote also. So please be assured that that will not change. If they're enrolled, they'll be going either every day in person or in person and remote, depending on what they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. DeCarlo. And just before I take our next question, I wanted to, I thought I heard a question, but it wasn't. It was, how are the cohorts decided? A number of factors go into cohorts, to how the cohort is decided. Our first approach is to make sure for childcare purposes that we take a look at students in the secondary who may have elementary siblings. And we are trying to make sure that if there is a family who has secondary students and elementary students, that we have those students in on the same cohort day to help families with childcare coordination. Other factors then come into play, such as teacher placement, teacher and principal placement recommendations, and the best decision in terms of instruction and class placement for students, but also at the secondary level, primarily the schedule that they're looking at, the schedule that they applied for as well too. So just wanted to highlight that. Next in our participant chat, we have Janine McCarthy. Please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, my question was, I know that we were told that the cohorts would be announced in the letters getting sent home Friday. Will they also be put on the parent portal, or we have to wait for that to come in the mail?
So thank you for the question. We had anticipated having cohorts families a little bit sooner. Our frame of thinking was we wanted to be able to hold our town halls to let parents have a good understanding as they make a decision whether they want to participate in the hybrid model or the remote learning option. The most recent tropical storm pushed our town halls out. So what we are doing now, because we can't really make the good cohort placement decisions unless we know the number of students that will be opting out of the in-person learning and the hybrid model. So after tomorrow's town hall, we will send out the form for parents to indicate if they want to opt out of in-person learning. We anticipate that we will allow parents and households to fill that out to make their decision and submit that by Sunday, August 16th. And we anticipate being able to make cohort announcements by mid next week. And I'm sorry, Ms. McCarthy, could you restate the second part of your question?
Will it be on the parent portal, or are we going to have to wait for a mail? Because we're trying to set up childcare.
Sure. We are going to be looking at if the Infinite Campus application can put the cohort designation within the parent portal. We're taking the update to our system will be coming, I believe, tonight, and our schedulers will have more information about that tomorrow for us.
Yeah, we're going to try to get it on the portal because we know it's really important for everybody. We've never had to do this before, so it's an absolutely new system to organize, not by class, not by bus route, but also by cohort. So we think we'll be able to put it on the portal. So when we open up the portal and we have our portal day like we did last year, our hope is to have your bus run like normal, but also have which cohort, or if you're in person, available through parent portal. We've never done it before. We think it can be done. We will definitely communicate that.
Well, I'm sorry, I have one more question. Will the teachers be posted on the 14th on the portal, or we have to wait like the elementary school for that letter to come?
I believe at this time, the letter regarding teachers and also the secondary specific schedules will be sent later as we come towards as closer towards the fall opening. Those decisions require a little bit more detail and are subject to a lot of changes that do occur other than just the cohort assignment.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep as many processes that worked previously intact, and the processes of schedules and what's your classroom teacher and all that sort of stuff. We're going to keep those processes intact, as trying to keep as much normalcy as we can in our processes and procedures.
Next in the participant chat, we have username capital M, capital B. Please feel free to unmute and state your question.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this. This is very helpful. And I'm sorry if this is going to be repetitive, but holidays, how is that going to work if you're going to have, right now, I guess, let's say 3 days blue and then 2 days gold. So let's say for Thanksgiving, let's just say for Thanksgiving. So the first 3 days will be blue, and then it starts off again with the gold the following week.
So we're making sure that I want to make sure I follow up with you on that, because we are still looking at normally what would occur is that the days would not be interrupted. We'd start again once the holiday was over. I want to make sure with our schedule, I touch base with our schedulers. I will follow up with them to make sure that whether it's the secondary or the elementary, we have a clear understanding of what will happen when do the days continue? Do we restart? Do we pause the days? I want to make sure I follow up with the most accurate information as it stands as we're starting to look at that schedule for you.
Okay, and that's why it's not, I'm sorry.
No, that's a great question. And what we'll do is you're going to be, once we finalize it, this is Mr. DiCarlo. Once we finalize it, you're going to actually get that schedule. So you'll know before the school year what each day is, a blue or a gold day. So there'll be no misunderstanding. We're going to try to match them up to make sure they're as even as possible, but you'll be getting a master schedule of each day and whether it's blue or gold.
Oh, excellent. So that's the reason why there's not 1 week blue and 1 week gold, correct? Right, I got it now.
Right.
I got it. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Desire to have much student contact as safely possible.
Right. Now, the other thing is how looping will still be looping. This is for middle school. Will looping still be looping?
In terms of scheduling, as I said, we're going to try to keep the things the same as possible. I would, if you're on a looping team, want to know if you're on a looping team, please call Mr. Kazakria. It means your looping team. If you're blue, only the blue kids are in that day on your looping team, right? If you're gold, but specific questions about looping, I think are better suited to Mr. Kevins or Mr. Kazakria or Mrs. Fallman.
Okay.
But great question.
Thank you. One more, transportation. How is that being handled? Transportation, like every other seat, 1 kid per seat, or we don't know yet?
So this is Mr. DiCarlo again. It's going to be 1 kid per seat with masks on, but I encourage everybody, if you haven't seen it yet, what I'm trying to do, everybody, is literally go to every single school, kind of walk you through what it's going to look like. We just did Lakeview today, and we did Austin, and then we actually did transportation in the high school yesterday. So those 4 schools should be up, and I encourage you to look at it. Kind of gives you and your child a little bit of an overview of what things will look like, both before school, after school, in school, in these most important areas. And then next week, at the end of the week, we're going to be uploading Fulmer and the middle school, only because, once again, because of the storm. But yes, we're working on that. And as Mr. Tremblay said, part of the survey that you're going to be getting this week on Wednesday through Sunday is whether or not you're using the buses AM, PM, so that we can then put that together based on the cohort model, and then you'll be getting your schedule out for transportation.
Thank you so much. And last question, I promise. So from my understanding, you're going to be cleaning the classrooms in the evening, correct?
Yes.
In the evening. So during the day, when they're going into different classrooms and different desks, that's not going to be cleaned, correct? Because there's no time.
I'll address that if that's okay. So, hi. Most of the classes with the cohorts, we are trying to keep the students in the rooms in the elementary schools and have the teachers rotate in, so that they aren't sharing desks. So their desk would be their desk. The same thing at the middle school as much as possible.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the high school is a little different, but again, there isn't the ability to clean the desk between classes. So unfortunately, we can't do the classes. All our regular high touch areas, our bathrooms, we will have a schedule. We will doing that on a consistent basis, but it's just impossible. There's too many classes and the movement is significant, but they are trying to also in their cohorts and their classes try and keep those students somewhat together to limit that also.
That's great. I'm still going to send my kid in and with Clorox wipes. How's that?
Thank you. So
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. Just a little bit of a housekeeping item. We have quite a few hands raised, and we have, from a time perspective, about a little less than 10 minutes and we know we won't be able to get to all those questions. So if you could, we want to get to as many people as possible. Please ask one question. We'll make sure we want to get as many people in there. So please limit your questions to one question per time. And I believe Mariana Aguila, you're next in the chat. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Mariana, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. I just had a really quick question. I have an 11th grader and a 6th grader, and how can I ensure that they have the same cohort for babysitting purposes?
So in our schedule, Mariana, the cohorts are based on household. So if they're in the same household, we're making sure that those kids are in the same cohort. So that's kind of one of the things of how we create the cohort. So by households. So if you have people in the same household, they're going to stay not only for childcare, but also for mitigation purposes. So we have one household in a building at a time so that there's not crossing between blue and gold in a particular household.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next in the chat, username Caleb Shepard. Please feel free to unmute yourself, Caleb. Username Caleb Shepard, last name Schepart. Caleb, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, got it. So my question is about student movement in the middle school. Just to clarify, because what I'm imagining is that my daughter entering 6th grade is going to be in a 6 foot by 6 foot space in her classroom at the same desk, and everything's kind of coming to her throughout the day. Is that more or less a fair vision?
Yeah. So what'll happen in middle schools are a little bit different than high schools because they're in teams. So what'll happen is the middle school is working on keeping kids in the same classroom and having the teachers rotate. So your child will have the same desk, right? So if it's English, they'll have their English teacher and everybody has that English teacher. And then when math time comes, instead of getting up and moving, the math teacher will come into that room so that the only thing that really changes in that room is the instructor.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Next in the chat queue is Michelle. Please feel free to unmute yourself and state your question.
Hi, I just have a question. My son's in middle school, going into middle school, and he's in the special needs class. And basically, when he's doing the distance learning, he was having trouble and couldn't focus very well, and would need me to constantly, at least for the summer, have me contact the aides to kind of get him back on track. How is that going to work for the school year? Like, is there going to be availability for that? Like for the 6 hours? Like, how is that when he's distance learning?
So I think that's a great question. And we've learned a lot from our closure previously. So again, as I said, if your child's in a full day special education class, and we'll be communicating that, your child will be in every day. If they're not, and they're in an ICT or they're just like one period a day in a special class, If on their IEP, it's a 12-1-2 and there's 2 additional adults, or if your child has, and I can't get specific about your child and
Right, I understand.
but if one particular child has additional support, we will do what we've learned to do a lot better over this summer, is provide that support through the teacher. So if your child is on a cohort day where they're remote learning, that there'll be additional supports available for your child through our teaching assistants. And because they will be in school with Chromebooks ready to assist students. And so there'll be a way, communicating with your case manager, there'll be a way to say, to get in touch with that teaching assistant to support your child while they're on distance learning. So we've learned a lot, we've gotten a lot better, and we're positioned to have our teaching assistants support those kids who are at home learning remotely during that time.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next in our chat is Adrian, username ANDRENE. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much for having us on this forum.
You're welcome.
So just wanted to know, so if we opt into the hybrid model, can we opt out at any point if we change our mind and decide we don't want the child to be in person?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That'd be a communication to the building principal and making sure that they're aware of that as well too.
And not to be redundant, it's the other way around that we can't. If you opt into full remote, you can't just, you got to wait till the next quarter at the secondary or trimester at the elementary to go back into in person. So going the other way is okay. Going from full remote to hybrid, you got to wait for the next marking period.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Next, Fiona Carey, FIONACAREY. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and we're looking forward to your question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. I just have a question for students, especially the younger K-2 grades, that may be attending a daycare setting for the for the remote days. If that work isn't being done with the daycare provider and it's being done in the evening with the parents at home, how will that be reflected in attendance, and what access to materials will they have?
Great question. So that's one of those questions that we're exploring with our community daycare partners, particularly those that are within MAEPEC. Our initial thinking is that since there is a device that every child has, we're looking to see if it's possible to allow those students to participate remotely at those daycare providers. That's one of those where we don't have the full answer for us yet. We're still working with our partners and thinking through our plan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just Fiona, I don't know the potential provider, but as a parent, look, none of us have had to do this before. As a school system, as a parent, I have 2 kids of my own who are going to be on a hybrid model as well. One of the things to ask the daycare provider if they have wireless access. And if they have wireless access and the kids can bring their Chromebook there and there's still connectivity issues, we will support if any technical issues that you may have with your child. So I would ask the question from whatever provider they have, do they have wireless access? And we'll make sure that your child can get connected to their wireless access.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, Fiona. Next in the chat, and this will be our last question for this evening, excuse me, but we'll go ahead and remind you on how you can continue to submit your questions and also about our next town hall. We definitely want to hear from you. We apologize that we're not able to get to everybody in this forum, but we'll give you some resources and some ways that you can submit your question. For the last question of the evening, username Lynn Hubert Nevada, please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if there's any plan for essential workers or the parents that do have to work all day and got a bulk of the homework done in the evenings. And if 2 parents are working and your child can't be live from 8 to 3, how is that going to work?
So Lynn, it's a question that we've grappled with all the way back in the spring. And throughout the process of this, I think at this point in time, it's going to be communication with the teacher and with the building. We know that there are going to be some circumstances that need individual attention. So we're going to continue to explore that, look at how we can address that. For right now, it's best to have when that occurs, to have on those non-in-person days, to have a conversation with your classroom teacher and the building principal to let them know and communicate that specific situation for your household. But we're going to continue to dive into that as we know that many parents might be in that situation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to look at our next steps, and we appreciate the questions that were asked, and we'll talk about if we did not get to your question. And if my colleagues can let me know if they can't see my screen, we should be on a slide that says next steps. And these are not all inclusive. We know that. Pardon me?
It's there.
Okay, thank you. It's called teamwork. Thank you very much. We know that these are not all inclusive. The nature of a health crisis is constantly changing, so we have to be able to pivot and adapt whatever verb you want to put in there. Next steps, we're always making decisions with the continued safety of our staff and students. We will be sending out, after our last town hall, which occurs tomorrow at 2 p.m., we will be sending out a questionnaire that will provide us data that helps us put the final touches on releasing the cohort, helps us to plan for transportation possibilities, and also food service. So when you receive that form, you'll have that will be the opportunity to request 100% remote learning. You'll be able to request a mask wearing exemption, which will then be reviewed by our health services provider. We'll ask you a question on what are your thoughts right now, and this is non-binding, but what are your thoughts right now to help us plan on, will you be using district transportation in the AM? Will you be using district transportation in the PM? Or will you be dropping off your children directly to school? In a similar manner, we'll be asking for your best thoughts on what you anticipate to do in terms of food service and lunch. Do you anticipate using the school lunch, or do you anticipate bringing your lunch for the majority of the time? And again, it's non-binding, but just a way to help us gather information to help us plan. That will be sent out, we anticipate, after our last town hall tomorrow. And again, we'll ask you to return that information we're anticipating by Sunday, August 16th, allowing us to hopefully provide you with the best known cohort information at that time by midweek of next week. So again, that's when we'll announce the cohort assignment, because the 100% remote learning will dictate sort of the balance that we bring to our cohorts. We are continuing to build the course schedules, and we'll communicate that as we come closer towards late August. So what I mean by that is the specific schedule that your student will have during the day, or placement during the day. We will, on our website in the next few days, be posting our remote learning plan. That can be found within our larger plan. So the schedule, if we have to go to a full remote model. We will codify and post our testing and tracing procedures. But as I said before, as a school district, we do not have the capability to test our staff and students. So we would rely on the community testing resources that are available. And we will partner with the DOH to do a contact tracing if need be as we reopen. As Dr. Stoll said, we are going to take all of the questions you've asked here. We're going to take all the questions that we receive as individual administrators. We're going to take the questions that you've asked in through our website form. And we'll synthesize those and look for similar topics and create an FAQ so that you can refer to. We will be sending home a home language preference survey to households that we know have multiple languages in the household, to make sure that we can communicate in the best and most effective way possible. And then we will continue to listen, communicate, adapt, and adjust as needed as this health crisis unfolds. Wanted to take a moment to remind you that if you navigate to the district reopening website, and I can show you how you can get there, you will have the opportunity to submit a reopening question or concern, and I'll show you how you get there through that. If you navigate to our homepage, which is mayapec.org, you can scroll down underneath the picture of our superintendent to the quick links section. Dr. Stoll and our public relations specialist, Maria Slippin, and other staff have created a dedicated school district reopening site. There you can find quick links to some community health and safety resources. You can find school-related resources for parents and guardian, teaching and learning resources for our staff. This is a growing repository of tools that we are providing for our staff. But also you can have all the latest district communication updates, the videos that we have. You'll be able to access our reopening and mitigation plan. Dr. Stoll mentioned if you're experiencing any technical issues at home with your district device or accessing any applications, you can click on the Parent Student Technology Help Desk. That's where you'll receive resources. You have additional links for resources and assistance. Again, we put another spot for our teachers and our students to access any of our learning resources. We have health and safety community resources there as well. And then finally, all the way down to the bottom, you can click on submit a reopening question or concern. I'll stop sharing my screen to wrap up. Just wanted again to say thank you. We know that your time is valuable, and we know that your partnership is invaluable to allowing us to safely reopen. We do appreciate you posing questions to us because it helps us make sure that we're paying attention to all the details and making sure we have the best plan and actions going forward. So we really appreciate the time you took today and the time you take to provide us with questions. Without delaying any longer, I'll say thank you again. Mr. DiCarlo, I'll leave you with the last word.
Well, I want to thank you, Mike, and those of you who are still on with us. You can see the amount of work that has gone into this. And as we mentioned, this is going to be fluid. There's going to be things that are going to change before now in September. And if that does happen, we will update you in our Tuesday and our Friday mailers. We thank you for your commitment, your patience, your understanding through these difficult times that we've never gone through before. And I will tell you, you never cease to amaze me. I think we all understand as a community, we're in this together. We want to make it the best possible we can for our kids. And on behalf of myself and the Board of Education, we thank you for your continued support. We're here to support your students throughout the course of this year, and we want it to be the best it can be under these very difficult times. So thank you all very much. Please stay safe, and we'll be updating you over the next number of weeks, and we look forward to seeing your kids in school the first second week of September. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. DiCarlo. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, so you'll receive a notice that the host has ended the meeting. I don't want it to be abrupt, but you will receive that notice. Thank you, and please be safe, stay healthy, and have an enjoyable evening.
Thank you.